Sean talks a lot on the phone and on the TV with speakers and stuff, and I was like a sex slave, okay? For them, that's what I was. That's all.
Things about to go south for Diddy with this new testimony that just hit the courtroom.
I had sex with Cassie and Sean. Basically, he would masturbate and tell me what to do with Cassie. I had like 15 encounters, and I heard lots of business.
In explosive new testimony, Diddy's alleged sex slave just described what went down in what he called a torture room inside Diddy's mansion. The claims? Disturbing. So disturbing, in fact, that Diddy reportedly covered his face in court as the details were read aloud. So what exactly did he say? And could this testimony finally bring everything crashing down? Let's break it all down. Diddy's sex slave gives shocking testimony. Diddy's trial has been serving up nothing but straight bombshells since day one, but nothing prepared the courtroom for the testimony involving an alleged sex slave.
Do you know Sean Combs?
Puff Daddy?
Yeah.
Diddy, whatever you call himself these days. Yeah, go ahead.
This testimony by Jonathan Oddie had Diddy visibly shaken, covering his face as the graphic details surfaced about what supposedly went down behind closed doors at his mansion. For those who don't know the backstory, Jonathan Oddie is a name that suddenly became vital to this Diddy case when Cassie Ventura mentioned him during her testimony, confirming that this man, who had previously made wild claims about being Diddy's sex slave, was indeed hired by Diddy multiple times for sexual encounters. What makes this connection so bizarre for many folks is that Oddie is the same dude who allegedly opened fire inside former President Donald Trump's Florida hotel back in 2018, creating a massive scene that led to his arrest after a shootout with police. Back then, nobody took his claims about Diddy seriously. They were dismissed as the ramblings of someone who wasn't mentally stable. But now, after federal raids on Diddy's crib and the indictment on serious sex trafficking charges, those once dismissed claims are being re-examined with fresh eyes. During a police interrogation after the Trump hotel incident, Oddie made startling accusations about being Diddy's sex slave, claims that sounded outlandish at the time, but right now is starting to make a whole lot of sense with the current criminal case against the music mogul.
I had a settlement with Sean, okay? And he belongs to that agenda. That's why he's so famous. They land all the contracts. It's his attorneys, which are Mark Garagos and Ben Mercedes.
According to courtroom folks, when prosecutors brought up Oddie's name and previous allegations during questioning, Diddy's demeanor completely changed. He went from his now signature calm, Bible-reading persona to visibly distressed, at one point covering his face with his hands as the details of Oddie's claims about a so-called torture room in Diddy's mansion were read into the record. The prosecution just hit Diddy's defense with a serious blow. They're flipping the script by tying Oddie's past claims into the current case, painting a bigger picture of what they're calling a long-running pattern, not just with Cassie Ventura, but now involving male victims too. This ain't just a personal beef anymore. They're calling it a full-blown criminal enterprise. What really makes this hit different is that Cassie backed it up under oath. She straight up confirmed that Oddie was hired multiple times for sexual encounters. That's huge. That one statement flipped Oddie from sounding like some outsider with wild stories to someone whose words might actually lock this case down. Now, the prosecution's holding him up as a key player who can help drive their whole narrative forward. When it came to the torture room talk, prosecutors didn't hold back. They laid out claims that parts of Diddy's properties were set up for freak-offs, parties with high-level sex setups that allegedly involve pressure, drugs, and flat-out humiliation. They even broke down the specifics: extra linens to deal with the blood and bodily fluids, baby oil that had to be reapplied every 5 minutes, and special air fresheners just to cover up the smell. These details are nasty, and the prosecution is building a vibe that this wasn't random or reckless behavior. It was organized, repeated, and now it's all catching up.
And it would always be like Glade, or there was another brand that she mentioned because he wanted it to smell a certain way.
The courtroom fell silent as Cassie detailed these rooms, explaining that she was allegedly forced to participate in freak-offs even during her period, resulting in blood-stained sheets, and described instances involving urine and other bodily fluids. These graphic details had many jurors visibly uncomfortable, with several looking away as the testimony continued. Adding to this already explosive testimony, Oddie's ex-wife has now come forward, claiming that her former spouse still fears Diddy to this day, suggesting that whatever happened between them left lasting psychological trauma. This outside claim further strengthens the prosecution's narrative about the intimidation and fear Diddy allegedly used to control his victims. Diddy's defense team been moving slick, trying to throw shade on the narrative by aiming at Oddie like he's the weak link. They brought up his messy legal past, tried to say the dude's not stable mentally. Their angle, that his whole story was just a wild deflection, a smokescreen to cover up his own dirt from that 2018 Trump hotel stunt. While that's one way to look at it, here's where things get interesting. Back then, folks might have brushed Oddie off as just another headline. Now though, some of the exact details from his original claims are lining up real tight with Cassie's recent recent testimony against Diddy. That overlap? It's hitting different. Suddenly, it's not so easy to call his words pure fantasy when another voice on a totally separate timeline is echoing the same chilling patterns. The legal world's watching this play out like a live battle, and what they're seeing is the prosecution slowly stacking a case that ain't based on just one witness, but a whole pattern of behavior that's hard to ignore. This ain't no solo shot. It's looking like a series of replays, each one reinforcing the next. Even Nancy Grace, who don't play when it comes to calling out predators, spoke on it loud and clear. She said this case is starting to look like a confederacy of people who allegedly played their role in helping Diddy carry out these crimes. We're talking about allegations of sex workers being flown across state lines. That ain't just scandalous, that's federal territory. So while the defense is out here pointing fingers, the prosecution is moving like chess masters.
We've already made that out. That is a federal crime. Remember all the male sex workers that Diddy's associates, his confederacy, would fly in and make the travel arrangements for? That's why they were talking about that, Harvey.
The talk about these so-called torture rooms just flipped the courtroom upside down. What was once seen as a messy celeb scandal is now looking like something way darker. The prosecution's been putting the spotlight on these spaces, saying they weren't just some wild setups for consensual adult fun, but full-blown traps built for control, abuse, and power moves. They saying this is a system, not a one-off. According to the feds, these rooms were part of a much bigger operation, a whole enterprise moving in silence while putting people through hell. And now, the jury's being shown how it all connects, the places, the players, and the victims. What's really shaking folks in that courtroom is how Adi's past claims are lining up with the fresh testimony hitting the stand. It's no longer just about a famous name getting caught in the headlines. This is starting to sound like a machine, allegedly designed to exploit, manipulate, and leave a trail of broken people in its path. Right now, the sex slave claims just shifted the whole trial into a new lane. Prosecutors are saying this wasn't just some freaky lifestyle behind the scenes. It was a calculated underground system cloaked in the glitz of the music biz. But the question now is, how does this all line up with the video footage that's been driving the case? Are the tapes really backing up these stories? Let's dig deeper. Freak off videos and Diddy's pattern of control. Moving from the bombshell testimony about Diddy's alleged torture room, let's look at what might be the most shocking evidence in this case, the video footage. Words on the street is that the prosecution has obtained multiple recordings of these so-called freak-offs, and while the public hasn't seen them, the descriptions alone have left the courtroom stunned. According to court records, prosecutors have 9 videos of these freak-offs in their possession, even though these aren't being shown to the media or public. Although folks are questioning this decision, legal experts are supporting it, saying it's important to respect victims' right to privacy. The judge has ruled that only the jury will view these videos, with privacy screens installed on their monitors to prevent anyone else in the courtroom from seeing the footage.
Well, there's been a change to that, and so now only the jury is going to be able to view those freak-off videos.
While Diddy's defense team argues these videos show consensual stuff between adults, the prosecution's saying they evidence of coercion and exploitation. One particularly disturbing detail that's come from the courtroom is Cassie claiming that these encounters were often filmed by Diddy, with the recordings later used as leverage to ensure compliance and silence. This alleged blackmail story is crucial to the prosecution's case, as it directly connects to the talk about coercion, which is necessary for sex trafficking charges. The freak-offs reportedly followed a specific pattern, which Cassie broke down into steps during her testimony. First, descriptive foreplay, where she had to narrate what was happening. Second, touching with the introduction of baby oil. Third, oral sex, which she said she would rush to get to just to get it over with. And finally, intercourse, sometimes with Diddy watching and sometimes with him participating. One of the most shocking pieces of video evidence isn't from these private sessions, but from public surveillance. The now infamous 2016 hotel hallway footage showing Diddy chasing Cassie, throwing her to the ground, kicking her, and dragging her back to their room. This video, which CNN released in 2024, has been played multiple times for the jury, showing the violent consequences when someone tried to leave one of them freak-offs.
Including a former security officer at the hotel, where Diddy is seen on video attacking Ventura brutally. You remember that video back in 2016?
The hotel security officer who responded to that incident testified that when he arrived, Cassie was repeatedly saying she wanted to leave while Diddy's insisting she's not going anywhere. This testimony directly connects the public violence seen on the hotel surveillance tape with the private freak-off activities, establishing a pattern of control and coercion. What's shocking about these videos is how they allegedly show a progression from initial participation to increasing control and degradation. Multiple witnesses, including male escorts hired for these encounters, have testified that the activities became more extreme and degrading over time, with some describing incidents where participants were urinated on or subjected to other humiliating acts.
Now, the feds say Diddy once forced an escort to urinate on Cassie. That came out in court today.
One male escort testified that he witnessed Diddy's violence firsthand, saying he saw Diddy throw a liquor bottle at Cassie and heard him beating her in another room. This witness spilled the tea, saying the act was so disturbing that he eventually developed erectile dysfunction and couldn't perform during these encounters anymore. He described one particularly horrifying incident where he witnessed Diddy drag Cassie by her hair from a computer chair all the way to the bedroom while she was kicking and screaming and crying. It ain't just about the wild videos. Prosecutors say there's a whole system behind the scenes, like a dark operation running smooth and silent. According to the evidence, this wasn't some spontaneous mess. This was organized, calculated. They're talking about hotels booked with setups made for specific types of encounters, room arrangements tailored for control. Escorts weren't just pulled from the block, they were flown in, crossed state lines like it was nothing. The feds say there was even a pipeline of drugs being supplied, not just for party vibes, but allegedly to keep participants out of pocket and easy to manipulate. Drug use played a major role in those twisted freak-off sessions. Multiple testimonies say people were zoned out, barely aware, heavily intoxicated. Cassie's voice in all this hits hard. She claimed there were nights where she was so messed up she couldn't even say no, let alone fight back. Despite testimonies from Cassie and Diddy's sex slave, the defense is pushing a whole different narrative. They saying Cassie was deep into the drugs by choice, going harder than Diddy ever did. They're also claiming it wasn't Diddy feeding the habits, rather he was the one, trying to stop her from spiraling. According to them, Diddy was the one putting up the brakes, not the gas.
So they painted it as if she was like lost in this whole like drug abuse thing that was caused and spiraled out by Puff.
But the prosecution has countered these claims by establishing that Diddy was the one who supplied Cassie with drug connections in the first place, presenting this as another form of control. They've even presented evidence that Diddy himself had serious substance abuse issues, including an alleged overdose around the time of Whitney Houston's death. Some of the most disturbing video evidence comes from Diddy's own social media and interviews, which now take on some pretty messed up meanings in light of the current allegations. Clips of Diddy making strange comments about his parties have resurfaced, including one where he's telling someone about his party.
What's one misconception about you?
There are no misconceptions about me.
You're gonna hear about my party, they're gonna be shutting them down, they're gonna probably be arresting me.
Another disturbing video that's hit the courtroom shows Diddy at an auction offering a night out with him, saying winners will get a night out with him and eventually wake up beside him. In light of the current charges, these once playful comments now got everyone freaking out. One particular video that's been throwing the courtroom and legal folks into chaos showed Diddy's interactions with a young Justin Bieber, including one where Diddy tells the camera Bieber is about to have 48 hours with him and that they can't discuss what they're about to do together. While Bieber ain't spilling nothing about being a victim, these conversations are being scrutinized differently now, especially after Bieber's team recently issued a statement saying, although he's not among Sean Combs' victims, there are people who are genuinely harmed by him. Right now, the feds ain't playing. The prosecution came through with years worth of receipts, and it's all on tape. They built a tight timeline stacked with video evidence, everything from flashy industry parties to backstage run-ins, interviews, surveillance clips, and private link-ups. So the real question hovering over this whole thing is, are these visuals real proof or just raw footage being twisted into a storyline? The wider implications of the torture room claims. It's no news that the game just flipped. What started as another wild celebrity scandal has now turned into a full-blown legal firestorm. With explosive claims of a so-called torture room and hard-hitting video evidence, Diddy's case is shaping up to be one of the toughest celebrity cases in history. But how's Diddy and his legal squad clapping back? And what does this mean for the music industry that's already got cracks in the foundation? First up, Diddy's legal team is making it crystal clear. They want to split what they admit from what they deny. Yeah, they're acknowledging some domestic violence went down, but they're drawing a hard line between that and the federal level charges being thrown his way. Diddy's lawyer, Joe Tacopina, came out swinging that this is no RICO case, and it sure as hell ain't sex trafficking. He's calling out the prosecution for using a viral video as a stand-in for facts, saying they're filling in the blanks with shock value instead of solid proof.
This is not a racketeering case, not sex trafficking. That is a domestic violence case, and it's a bad and despicable act, but it's not sex trafficking. It's not racketeering.
Next, they're going after the credibility of the people talking. And the main focus? Cassie. Diddy's defense team is putting her under the microscope, highlighting inconsistencies in her testimony. They pulled up receipts showing her version of events, including that situation with Diddy and some guns at Mel's diner, all kept changing depending on who she was talking to. They're also pointing out text messages where she sounded positive about their relationship the day after she says something traumatic happened.
And she was like, I never said that. And they said, oh, okay, well, we have the transcripts from your interview with the prosecutors right here. She looks at it. She pauses for a moment. She said, I don't know why this would say that, because I've always said that I didn't go.
Now, about those freak-offs, the defense is trying to spin that narrative. They're saying these weren't forced. They were just wild adult parties between consenting people, especially when it comes to Jonathan Oddie, the man calling himself a sex slave. Diddy's team is bringing up his legal history, like the time he was involved in a shooting at a Trump hotel, to paint him as unstable, clout-chasing, or just trying to flip the situation to save himself. But maybe the most interesting part of Diddy's defense is not what's being said, it's how he's showing up. He's switching up his whole vibe in court, rocking soft-colored sweaters, keeping it clean cut, and even reading the Bible.
At another point in time, he was flipping through a Bible, reading a Bible, and if you'll notice, he's wearing these crew neck sweaters, this light color, which I think is pretty smart as a defendant.
But the prosecution ain't buying this. They're playing the long game, connecting all the dots. From the video evidence to the stories of psychological control and blackmail, they're building a bigger picture. Legal expert Nancy Grace broke it down, saying this isn't just about what happened in a room, it's about extortion, it's about fear. She explained how even the threat of releasing a freak-off tape could be used to control someone. I mean, if you're scared of getting exposed, getting beaten, or being tossed out of your home, you'll do anything to survive.
Well, remember, the state will have a closing argument to connect all the dots, but very clearly, what is being made out in this case is forcible and extortion.
The feds are playing for keeps, and the way they're building this case, it's looking real federal. Prosecutors ain't just talking wild, they're zoning in on how Diddy's crew allegedly moved people across state lines like it was nothing. Lisa Grace pointed out that Diddy's circle allegedly flew in male sex workers, booked their travel, and made all the arrangements. Terrence Howard, Lucius Lyon himself, even jumped in with a bombshell. He said Diddy allegedly invited him over multiple times and tried to get personal. Howard made it clear, though, that he wasn't with it. He shut it down.
Puffy invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while.
This case got folks asking the real questions. Who knew what, and when did they know it? Streets been buzzing, timelines on fire, and fans digging through old clips like detectives in the booth. Social media lit up with theories, and eyes turned toward artists like Nicki Minaj, who folks say been low-key distancing herself from Diddy for years. People ain't just gossiping, they talking about the whole industry's silence. It's that hush-hush culture, the same silence that let too much slide for too long. Now the mic's hot and nobody's off limits, but it ain't just about the charts or the headlines, it's getting personal. Diddy's fam showed up in court, real tense. His mom's, Janice Combs, been right there in the courtroom, locked in, watching it all unfold. His sons, too. On the flip side, Cassie's husband, Alex Fine, pulled up and reportedly stared Diddy down. No words, just heat. This shows that the courtroom ain't just about legal talk. It's a battlefield of emotions and scars. The jury's reaction to the testimony about the alleged torture room has been closely watched by court observers. Reports say that jurors were visibly uncomfortable during the graphic testimony, with some looking away as Cassie described the degrading acts she was allegedly forced to participate in. Their eventual verdict will depend on whether they believe these activities were part of a criminal enterprise or, as the defense claims, consensual adult behavior. After enduring grueling cross-examination about these traumatic experiences, Cassie's released a powerful statement saying the week has been extremely challenging, but also remarkably empowering and healing for her. She hopes that her testimony has given strength and a voice to other survivors and can help others who have suffered to speak up and also heal from abuse and fear. While this trial's heating up, the bigger picture is wild too. From Weinstein to R. Kelly, the game is shifting. It's like the curtain's getting pulled back on years of pain and privilege. Diddy, once crowned king of bad boy, is now facing the fall. 15 years to life if convicted. The suits, the Grammys, the legacy, it's all hanging in the balance. Even if he walks, his name ain't gonna echo the same in these streets. The whole freak-off and torture room talk has completely flipped him image. Diddy used to be that mogul, that boss with the Cyrock in hand and the platinum plaques behind him. But now, the public eye's changed. The stories we hear and videos we now see have shattered the illusion. Even industry vets say they never seen stuff like this. They saying this ain't just excess, it's evil wrapped in luxury. And it's not even at the end yet. Witnesses are still waiting to testify. Legal moves still on the table. The full weight of that video evidence is still not all revealed. This case is like an album with too many hidden tracks, each one darker than the last. One thing's for sure though, hip-hop's never gonna look at the industry the same. What was once whispers is now center stage. Diddy's fate hangs in the balance and the world's watching. Now that the Diddy trial has officially kicked off, things are starting to spiral, and not in his favor. Explosive new revelations are surfacing, and reports suggest that Diddy might be involved in witness tampering and obstructing the case.
He is now being accused of obstructing justice, witness tampering, and so forth.
But that's not all. There's word he may have lied under oath, and the judge reportedly isn't taking any of it lightly. In fact, sources say he's growing more furious by the minute, and if this keeps up, Diddy could be staring down a life sentence sooner than anyone expected. In this video, I'll break down the courtroom chaos and exactly what Diddy did to push the judge to the edge. The courtroom bombshell. On Thursday, May 8, 2025, what started as just another day in the ongoing case against the music mogul transformed into a major development in this high-profile case. Judge Arun Subramanian presided over what would become a defining moment in these proceedings. For those who've been following this legal drama since jury selection kicked off on May 5, 2025, the anticipation been building like crazy. The opening statements were scheduled to pop off on Monday, May 12th, marking the official start of a trial that prosecutors estimated would run anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks. The courtroom, already packed and buzzing with media attention, became even more tense when evidence emerged suggesting that Sean Diddy Combs had potentially committed perjury lying under oath during previous testimony. This revelation came during a critical pretrial hearing meant to finalize the pool of 45 potential jurors before selecting the final 12 jurors and 6 alternates needed for the trial. During this hearing, prosecutors presented new evidence that directly contradicted sworn statements Combs had previously made to the court. The specific details of the alleged perjury connect to contacts Combs reportedly made with witnesses, a subject that's been central to the prosecution's case and previous bail hearings. According to court documents, Combs had repeatedly denied making any attempts to influence potential witnesses or contact individuals connected to the case. However, prosecutors came through with evidence suggesting that Combs had in fact engaged in witness tampering while detained at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. This included allegations that he used the phone accounts of at least 8 other inmates and engaged in 3-way calls to contact individuals not on his approved list, clearly violating prison regulations. But what really caused a stir was the revelation that one of the potential jurors selected for the pool worked at MDC Brooklyn, the very facility where Combs has been locked up since September 2024. This juror's disclosure had the whole courtroom shocked, with some people even breaking into inappropriate laughter at how crazy the situation was.
Now, the issue with that is Diddy is currently locked up at MDC Brooklyn. He's been housed there since September.
So he could have got paid off, he could have got promised something, anything.
The judge's response was swift and decisive. Not only was the juror immediately dismissed, but Judge Subramanian took the extraordinary step of chastising both the prosecution and defense teams for their inadequate vetting of prospective jurors. The courtroom fell silent as the judge emphasized the severity of the charges and the absolute necessity for meticulous procedure. As the hearing progressed, attention shifted to what prosecutors described as a pattern of deception by Combs that extended far beyond the juror mishap. They presented evidence suggesting that Combs had deliberately misled the court about his communications with key witnesses in the case, including alleged contacts with individuals who had received grand jury subpoenas. According to documents presented to the court, Combs had allegedly called or texted Kalena Harper, a former associate, 58 times in just 4 days, starting September 10, 2024, after a lawsuit was filed by Dawn Richard alleging assault and other misconduct. The total number of phone contacts between Combs and Harper reportedly reached 128 before suddenly ceasing on September 14, 2024. Emily Johnson, a prosecutor in the case, told the court that these contacts included asking for support, friendship, and convincing the victim they willingly engaged in sex acts, with what she described as a thinly veiled reference to continuing financial support. She further alleged that Combs had used intermediaries and spread false narratives, essentially gaslighting witnesses to influence their testimony. The implications were clear. If substantiated, these actions constituted a serious obstruction of justice and a direct affront to the judicial process. The allegations of witness tampering had been a crucial factor in previous bail hearings. During a hearing on November 27, 2024, Judge Subramanian had denied bail, citing compelling evidence of Combs' propensity for violence and evidence of a serious risk of witness tampering. The judge had specifically noted violations of Bureau of Prisons regulations to obscure communications. It's worth noting that this confrontation came after multiple bail denials and increasing legal pressure on Combs. On September 19, 2024, U.S. Magistrate Judge Robin Tarnowski had denied bail, stating she could not reasonably assure his return to court or the safety of the community or a lack of witness tampering, a decision later upheld by U.S. District Judge Andrew Carter Jr. after an appeal. The case against Combs had been building steadily, with the music mogul facing charges including racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. The indictment alleged that between between 2008 and 2024, Combs abused, threatened, and coerced women and others, leading a racketeering conspiracy that included sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. But yesterday's hearing raised the stakes dramatically, bringing the issue of perjury and contempt of court squarely into focus. Legal experts quickly noted that perjury in federal court is a felony offense that carries a potential sentence of up to 5 years in prison, separate from and in addition to any penalties Combs might face if convicted on the existing charges. More immediately concerning for the defense team, however, was how these revelations might impact the jury selection process and the trial itself. With Judge Subramanian now openly questioning Combs' credibility and expressing profound dissatisfaction with his conduct, the path forward suddenly appeared much more treacherous for the embattled music mogul. According to reports from those present in the courtroom, Judge Subramanian announced that he would be taking the extraordinary step of referring the matter to federal prosecutors for consideration of additional charges related to perjury and obstruction of justice. In a move that legal observers described as unprecedented in a case of this profile, the judge declared that he was revoking certain procedural privileges that had previously been extended to Combs and his legal team, citing what he termed a pattern of deception and disrespect for these proceedings. The courtroom sat in stunned silence as the ramifications of this decision became clear. By limiting certain procedural options, the judge had effectively tightened the constraints on Combs' defense strategy, creating new and significant challenges for his legal team as they prepared for opening statements. As the hearing drew to a close, the implications of what had transpired were still being processed by those in attendance. What had begun as a procedural hearing to finalize jury selection had transformed into a watershed moment that could potentially reshape the entire trajectory of this high-profile case. The events in that Manhattan courtroom on May 8, 2025, had made one thing abundantly clear. Judge Arun Subramanian was not going to tolerate any attempts to manipulate the judicial process through deception. As for what this means for the trial scheduled to begin on Monday, May 12th, that remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, the atmosphere in that courtroom has been forever altered by the judge's response to what he clearly viewed as a grievous breach of judicial trust. The witness stand revelation. The allegations against Diddy align with previous claims made by Philip Pines, Combs' former senior executive assistant who worked for the music mogul from December 2019 to December 2021. In a detailed lawsuit and subsequent media appearances, Pines has painted a picture of a man accustomed to wielding his influence to ensure compliance and loyalty.
I remember hearing the words, "Prove your loyalty to me, King."
Phil Pines, who was Diddy's senior executive assistant from 2019 to 2021, revealing to journalist Mara Escampo details of the night he says Sean Combs coerced him into having sex with a woman at an out-of-control sex party.
In his lawsuit, Pines alleged he was pressured into sexual acts to demonstrate loyalty, including being pushed to have sex with a woman during what was described as a Wild King night. He also claimed he was responsible for cleaning up after these parties, which allegedly involved drugs, alcohol, and sexual activities.
Freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time.
Alcohol, marijuana, ketamine, baby oil, and Astroglide were very important. Candles, incense.
While Pines' allegations were initially viewed by some as separate from the core charges against Combs, yesterday's revelation suggests a disturbing pattern of behavior that prosecutors now argue extends to witness manipulation and perjury. The judge's reaction yesterday came after prosecutors presented evidence that Combs had not only lied about contacting witnesses, but had also potentially attempted to orchestrate what amounted to a form of jury tampering. The revelation that one of the potential jurors worked at MDC Brooklyn, the very facility where Combs has been detained, raised immediate red flags. While no direct connection between Combs and this juror has been established, the failure of both legal teams to identify this obvious conflict during the vetting process prompted a strong response from the bench.
Get this far. Yeah, how did he get to the point where he's coming in front of the court and this is being put on record? Not only does it not look like, it doesn't look good, right?
This incident, coming on the heels of allegations that Combs had lied under oath about witness contacts, created what one courtroom observer described as a perfect storm of judicial outrage. The legal tensions were further fueled by what prosecutors described as a pattern of legal maneuvers designed to delay and obstruct the proceedings. On April 18, 2025, Combs' attorneys had requested a 2-month adjournment to better prepare their defense, initially suggesting a 2-week delay. This request came after a third superseding indictment on April 4, 2025, which added 2 new charges, 1 count each of sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution. Judge Subramanian had denied this this request, stating Combs had sufficient legal representation with at least 4 attorneys and that the trial date of May 5, 2025 would not be delayed. The judge also noted he would not allow a fishing expedition for more evidence. Yesterday's hearing brought these tensions to a head, with clear indications that the court viewed Combs' alleged deception about witness contacts as part of a broader strategy to undermine the judicial process. Legal analysts present in the courtroom later described the proceedings as extraordinarily tense as the evidence of alleged perjury mounted. The decision to refer the matter for potential additional charges indicated the seriousness with which the court viewed these allegations. But beyond the immediate courtroom drama, yesterday's revelations have potentially far-reaching implications for the trial itself. With credibility now a central issue, Combs' defense strategy faces significant new challenges. The allegations against Combs are already extremely serious. He faces federal charges including racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution, with prosecutors claiming these activities formed part of a criminal enterprise spanning from 2004 to 2024. The specific charges relate to allegations that Combs operated a criminal enterprise, using his business empire to coerce women into sexual acts during events termed freak-offs, and employing threats, violence, and blackmail to maintain control. These charges alone carry potentially severe penalties. If convicted on all counts, Combs could face decades in prison, but the addition of potential perjury charges adds another layer of legal jeopardy, with federal perjury convictions carrying up to 5 years of imprisonment per count. More immediately concerning for the defense is how these revelations might influence the jury pool. While jurors are instructed to consider only the evidence presented at trial, the publicity surrounding yesterday's dramatic confrontation could potentially impact the perspectives of those ultimately selected to hear the case. The judge's decision to revoke certain procedural privileges previously extended to Combs and his legal team also creates tangible challenges for the defense. While the specific privileges in question have not been publicly detailed, legal experts suggest they could include limitations on the filing of certain motions or restrictions on how the defense can present particular arguments or evidence. In a case of this complexity, such limitations could significantly impact defense strategy, particularly if they restrict the ability to challenge the admissibility of certain evidence or the testimony of specific witnesses. The timing of these developments, just days before opening statements are scheduled to begin, also creates practical challenges for Combs' legal team. With limited time to adjust their strategy, they now face the daunting task of preparing for trial under a cloud of judicial disapproval and with potentially reduced procedural options. Beyond the courtroom dynamics, yesterday's revelations have sparked renewed interest in the testimony of other witnesses and accusers who have come forward with allegations against Combs. Another key witness expected to feature prominently in the trial is Courtney Burgess, who has made serious allegations against Combs, including claims about possessing sex tapes and referring to the music mogul as Lucifer in an interview with News Nation. Burgess claims to have videotapes showing Combs and other celebrities engaging in sexual acts and assaults, with some allegedly involving minors. He further claimed in a News Nation interview that at least 3 of the individuals in the tapes were underage, and that the celebrities were drugged against their will. While Combs has vehemently denied these allegations, filing a $50 million defamation lawsuit against Burgess, his lawyer Ariel Mitchell, and News Nation, the claims add to the complex tapestry of accusations the jury will potentially need to evaluate. The trial has also been complicated by allegations involving other high-profile figures. In March 2025, a lawsuit named NFL star Odell Beckham Jr., comedian Drusky, and others as defendants, alleging their involvement in a violent gang rape in 2018 in Orinda, California. Both Beckham and Drusky have denied the allegations, with Beckham stating he was not in Orinda, California at the time and has never met the accuser. Drusky also denied involvement, noting in an X post that he was not a public figure in 2018 and had no entertainment industry connections. These interconnected allegations create a complex web that prosecutors will need to carefully navigate as they present their case. But yesterday's dramatic developments suggest that the focus of the trial may increasingly shift to Combs' credibility and his alleged attempts to manipulate the judicial process. According to courtroom observers, the atmosphere in the room was described as electric with tension during yesterday's proceedings. For Combs and his legal team, the path forward suddenly seems fraught with new and significant challenges. The dramatic developments have not only potentially damaged Combs' credibility in the eyes of the court, but have also created practical obstacles that could impact their defense strategy. As all parties prepare for opening statements scheduled to begin on Monday, May 12th, the events of yesterday have cast a long shadow over the proceedings. What was already a high-profile case with potentially severe consequences has now taken on an additional dimension, with issues of judicial integrity and respect for the legal process moved squarely to center stage. The question now is how these developments will influence the trial going forward, and whether yesterday's dramatic revelations mark a turning point in what promises to be one of the most closely watched legal battles in recent memory. The legal fallout and future implications. As the hood continues to process the wild events that went down in Judge Subramanian's courtroom yesterday, all eyes are turning to what this means for the long-term situation facing Sean Diddy Combs, his legal squad, and this high-profile trial that's about to pop off. Legal experts from across the spectrum have been quick to weigh in on the significance of the judge's response to allegations that Combs lied under oath about witness contacts. The consensus emerging from these analyses suggests that yesterday's developments may represent a critical turning point in the case, one that fundamentally changes the game and potentially reshapes how this whole thing plays out. At the most immediate level, the judge's decision to refer the matter for consideration of additional perjury charges creates a new and significant legal vulnerability for Combs. Federal perjury charges ain't no joke, carrying potential penalties of up to 5 years in prison per count. More than that, they strike at the heart of the judicial process itself, reflecting what courts view as a fundamental breach of the trust and integrity upon which the legal system depends. When a defendant is believed to have lied under oath, it creates a cascade of problems for the defense, explains prominent legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Elena Michaels. Not only does it potentially expose the client to additional charges, but it damages credibility with the court in ways that can be virtually impossible to repair. This damage to credibility may be particularly consequential given the nature of the existing charges against Combs. The music mogul already faces a formidable array of federal charges, including racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution, all serious offenses carrying substantial potential penalties. These charges stem from allegations that between 2004 and 2024, Combs operated what prosecutors describe as a criminal enterprise, using his wealth, power, and influence to coerce women into participating in sexual activities, often during events termed freak-offs or wild king nights. The indictment further alleges that Combs employed threats, violence, and various forms of intimidation to maintain control over victims and prevent them from speaking out. The seriousness of these allegations is reflected in the fact that Combs has been denied bail 3 times, most recently in November 2024, when Judge Subramanian cited compelling evidence of Combs' propensity for violence and a serious risk of witness tampering as justification for continued detention. Beyond the immediate legal ramifications, yesterday's confrontation also raises significant questions about the strategy and approach of Combs' defense team. Led by attorneys Mark Agnifulo, Tenny Garagos, Alexandra Shapiro, and Anna Estevao, this team now faces the daunting task of rebuilding credibility with the court while simultaneously preparing for a complex trial under increasingly challenging circumstances. The judge's decision to revoke certain procedural privileges previously extended to the defense creates tangible obstacles that could impact their ability to present a comprehensive and effective case. While the specific privileges in question have not been publicly detailed, legal analysts suggest they could include limitations on the filing of certain motions, restrictions on how evidence can be presented, or constraints on the questioning of particular witnesses. In a case of this complexity, procedural flexibility is crucial for mounting an effective defense, notes criminal defense attorney Jonathan Reynolds. Any limitations imposed by the court could significantly impact strategy and potentially influence the ultimate outcome. Additionally, the timing of these developments, just days before opening statements are scheduled to begin, creates practical challenges for the defense team. With limited time to adjust their approach, they must now recalibrate their strategy under less than ideal circumstances. This task is made all the more challenging by the breadth and seriousness of the allegations against Combs. The prosecution's case reportedly includes testimony from multiple alleged victims, including individuals who claim to have been coerced into sexual activities at Combs' direction. One such individual is Philip Pines, Combs' former senior executive assistant, who has made detailed allegations about his experiences working for the music mogul from 2019 to 2021. In a lawsuit and subsequent media appearances, Pines has claimed he was pressured into sexual acts to demonstrate loyalty, including being pushed to have sex with a woman during what was described as a wild king night.
I just thought to myself, if I don't do this, I don't know what's gonna happen. This has all been a very psychological, emotional roller coaster for me.
Pines has also alleged that he was responsible for cleaning up after these parties, which allegedly involved drugs, alcohol, and sexual activities. This included removing drug evidence, bodily stains, deleting compromising videos, and ensuring silence by tipping hotel staff.
Did you ever see Diddy engaging in sexual activity?
I wouldn't see him engaging, but I would see him directing. He's usually the one filming, from my experience. You were instructed to scrub these things, delete any photos and videos that might be on these devices.
These allegations align with other claims that have emerged in the various lawsuits filed against Combs, creating a pattern of behavior that prosecutors argue demonstrates a systematic approach to exploitation and coercion. Another significant figure in the case is Adria English, a former adult entertainer who filed a lawsuit in July 2024, alleging she was groomed into sex trafficking at Combs' white parties between 2004 and 2009. English claims she was forced to consume drugs like ecstasy and coerced into sexual acts with guests, with Combs allegedly using his influence to silence her through threats of harm or career damage. English's case has faced its own challenges, with her legal representation changing multiple times. By March 2025, 2 sets of lawyers had withdrawn from the case, citing various reasons including irreconcilable differences, undermining behavior, and questionable antics. Despite these setbacks, her allegations remain part of the broader narrative prosecutors are expected to present at trial. The allegations against Combs extend beyond his direct actions to include claims about his broader social and business circles. In March 2025, a lawsuit amended by Ashley Parham named NFL star Odell Beckham Jr. and comedian Drusky, among others, as defendants, alleging their involvement in a violent gang rape in 2018 in Orinda, California. While both Beckham and Drusky have vehemently denied these allegations, with Beckham stating he was not in Orinda at the time and has never met Parham. The claims add another layer of complexity to an already multifaceted case. Against this backdrop of serious allegations, the focus on Combs' credibility takes on added significance. The specific evidence that triggered the judge's response reportedly relates to phone records and witness statements contradicting Combs' previous testimony about witness contacts. According to court documents, prosecutors presented evidence that Combs had used other inmates' phone privileges at the Metropolitan Detention Center to make unauthorized calls to individuals connected to the case. This alleged circumvention of prison communications protocols was viewed as particularly problematic, as it suggested a deliberate and calculated effort to evade monitoring and oversight, an impression reinforced by the revelation that a potential juror worked at the very facility where Combs is being detained. For legal observers, the developments in Judge Subramanian's courtroom yesterday represent a rare and significant moment in what has already been an extraordinary case. The public nature of the proceedings, conducted in open court with journalists and spectators present, sends a powerful message about the seriousness with which the court views these allegations of perjury and obstruction. When a federal judge reacts strongly to evidence suggesting a defendant lied under oath, it's a seismic event in a trial, explains judicial scholar Priya Sharma. It signals not just disapproval, but a fundamental breakdown in the relationship between the court and the defendant. A relationship that, while necessarily adversarial in some respects, depends on a baseline of honesty and good faith. This breakdown potentially creates ripple effects throughout the trial process. While judges are expected to maintain impartiality regardless of their personal views of a defendant's credibility, the practical reality is that judicial perceptions can influence various aspects of the proceedings, from rulings on objections to decisions about admissibility of evidence. Moreover, while jurors are instructed to base their verdicts solely on the evidence presented at trial, the ambient atmosphere created by yesterday's confrontation could potentially seep into the courtroom in subtle ways that might influence the overall trajectory of the case. Beat takes on a more contemplative quality. For Combs' legal team, these developments create a strategic conundrum of considerable proportions. On one hand, they must continue to vigorously defend their client against the serious charges he faces. On the other, they must now do so while navigating a relationship with the court that has been severely strained by allegations of deliberate deception. This challenge is compounded by the judge's decision to revoke certain procedural privileges previously extended to the defense, a move that legal analysts describe as unusual but within the court's discretion, particularly in cases where concerns about potential obstruction or manipulation have been raised. Whatever approach they choose, Combs' legal team now faces what one observer described as an uphill battle on terrain that has suddenly become much steeper. The presumption of innocence remains a cornerstone of our legal system, but the practical reality is that yesterday's confrontation has created additional challenges for a defense already confronting serious and multifaceted charges. For prosecutors, meanwhile, yesterday's developments potentially strengthen their overall narrative about Combs as someone willing to manipulate and, in intimidate others to protect his interests. The allegations of perjury regarding witness contacts align with their broader claims about how Combs allegedly operated his business empire, claims that form the foundation of the racketeering and sex trafficking charges at the heart of the case. Broader accusations about how he allegedly exerted control over employees, associates, and potential victims. Beyond the immediate participants in the trial, yesterday's dramatic confrontation also raises important questions about celebrity, power, and accountability in our legal system. Sean Diddy Combs built an empire that spans music, fashion, media, and business. An empire that brought him enormous wealth, influence, and public adulation. The allegations against him now call into question how that power may have been wielded behind closed doors, and whether systems designed to protect vulnerable individuals functioned effectively in the face of such influence. These are questions that extend far beyond any individual case, speaking to broader societal concerns about accountability and justice. For the many alleged victims who have come forward with claims against Combs, yesterday's developments may represent a significant moment, a public acknowledgement of concerns they have raised about manipulation and intimidation. Many of these individuals have described fears of retaliation as a factor that kept them silent for years, with some claiming that Combs' influence made it difficult to trust that they would be protected if they spoke out. As all parties prepare for opening statements on Monday, the legal community remains focused on how Judge Subramanian will navigate the complex terrain created by yesterday's revelations. Having addressed concerns about potential perjury, he must now ensure that the trial proceeds fairly and impartially, with decisions based solely on the evidence presented in court. This balancing act, maintaining the integrity of the judicial process while ensuring that all parties receive due process, represents one of the most fundamental challenges facing any judge in a high-profile case. Yesterday's developments only heighten the difficulty of this task. For jurors who will begin hearing evidence next week, the responsibility is equally weighty. They must evaluate complex and often disturbing testimony about events alleged to have occurred over a span of 2 decades, determining where truth lies in a case that has already generated enormous public attention and controversy. The path forward from yesterday's extraordinary courtroom developments remains uncertain. The judge's referral for potential perjury charges creates a parallel legal track that could continue long after the current trial concludes. The revocation of certain procedural privileges creates immediate practical challenges for the defense team, and the public nature of the confrontation ensures that it will be discussed and analyzed in legal circles for years to come. What is certain is that the events in Judge Subramanian's courtroom yesterday have fundamentally altered the landscape of this high-profile case. What was already one of the most closely watched trials in recent memory has now taken on additional dimensions of legal significance and public interest. As Monday's opening statements approach, all eyes remain fixed on that Manhattan federal courtroom, where the next chapter in this extraordinary legal saga will soon unfold. The question now is not just whether Sean Diddy Combs will be found guilty or innocent of the serious charges he faces, but whether the integrity of the judicial process itself can be maintained in the face of what the court views as attempts to undermine it. For a music mogul who once commanded the attention of millions with his artistic and business achievements, the spotlight now shines with an altogether different intensity, illuminating not glamour and success, but allegations of exploitation, coercion, and now, potentially, perjury. The dramatic courtroom scene may ultimately be remembered as a significant moment in this high-profile case, sending a clear message that no individual, regardless of fame, wealth, or influence, stands above the law or the fundamental requirement of honesty before the court. That brings us to the end of this video. For more interesting videos like this, click on the cards on your screen.